Welcome to the finale of Stage 7, Lesson 35 of 50. Today's command is just 3 letters, SCP, short for Secure Copy. Think of it as CP plus SSH fused into one tool, the same encryption, the same keys you already know, but now you can move files between machines. This is the piece that ties everything together. So what does SCP actually do? It copies files over SSH using the exact same syntax as CP, source, then destination, except now either side can live on another machine. The trick is the colon. A path with no colon is local, but add user at host :/path, and you're telling SCP to tunnel through SSH to a remote system. That's it. That single character flips a local copy into a network transfer, and it works in 3 directions: upload, download, or even server to server, passing through your laptop along the way. Let's see it in action. Mia has a deploy script sitting on her laptop, and she wants it on the server at /var/www. She types scp deploy.sh, then tom at the server :/var/www. Same authentication as SSH, so either a password prompt or her key takes over. A second later, the progress line confirms 100%, and a quick SSH over verifies the file landed exactly as expected. Read it left to right. Local source, arrow into the colon, remote destination. Now flip it around. If Mia needs to pull a log file off the server, she just swaps which side holds the colon, scp tom at server : the path, then a dot for her current folder, and the file comes down. For whole folders, add -r, exactly like CP, and one gotcha worth tattooing on your brain. SCP uses capital -P for a custom port, while SSH uses lowercase. Same idea, different letter, easy to trip on. And since we just mentioned that capital P quirk, let's look at the 3 flags you'll actually reach for. -V turns on verbose mode. When a transfer mysteriously fails, this shows you every handshake step. Capital -P sets the port, just like we said. And -I points to a specific private key, which you'll need constantly on AWS, where every instance has its own PEM file. Bonus tip: any host alias you've defined in SSH config works here too, so scp file myalias : / just works. And now, the moment everything's been building toward, Mia actually ships her app. Step 1, scp-dasher pushes the entire myapp folder to /var/www in a single command, and you can watch each file fly across at megabytes per second. Step 2, she SSHs in to fix ownership and restart Nginx. Step 3, curl from her laptop confirms the site is live. 3 commands, 3 tools, 1 deployment. That's stage 07 working as a team. Before we close out the stage, one mistake worth burning into memory: forgetting the colon. If you type scp deploy.sh tom at server with no colon at the end, SCP doesn't reach across the network at all. It just creates a local file literally named tom at server sitting in your current directory. No error, no warning, no SSH. The fix is simple. Always add the colon, even if nothing follows it. Tom at server : means home directory on the remote. No colon means you forgot the secure and secure copy. Now, SCP doesn't work alone, it has a family. Once you've sent a file, SAH lets you hop over and verify it landed. Same keys, same auth, just a different verb. For folders you sync repeatedly, rsync is smarter. It only sends the bytes that actually changed. And if you prefer an interactive feel, FTP drops you into a prompt where you can put, get, and ls like you're browsing. Same SSH foundation underneath all 3. Time to get your hands on the keys. Grab any target, a cheap VPS, a Raspberry Pi, even localhost if you've got SSH running. First, push a file up, create test.txt, then scp it to user a host with a colon and a path. Next, reverse it. Colon on the left means you're pulling down. And finally, the one you'll use most, scp-r on a whole folder. It's CP recursive just over the network. And just like that, stage 07 is in the books. 5 commands, 1 unified skill. The entire network is now within reach of your terminal. Ping, curl, wget, SSH, and SCP, that's the full toolkit for talking to other machines. Next up, stage 08 turns the lens inward. Processes, live activity, disk space, the system internals, every SysAdmin leans on. I'll see you in lesson 36, where we start with PS.